Video, we'll be talking about the decision dashboard. It's another one of the reports that are available through the EVOS system, and let's take a look at that. To get to the decision dashboard, you'd open up your account for EVOS and go to School Reports, and it'll be the fourth one down that says Decision Dashboard. And let's do a quick reminder of some of the color coding that goes with the value-added reports. Quick reminder of the color coding that's used in the value-added reports, and it's used also in the decision dashboard report. The dark green color indicates significant evidence of growth. The light green is moderate evidence, and this is all determined by the standard error of above and below the growth measure. We've learned that in a previous lesson. Yellow means that group of students maintain their relative position to the growth measure of 0. Orange is falling, moderate evidence of falling behind. And then red means there's significant evidence that those students did not meet growth, below 2 standard errors. So here we're going to take a look at one of the decision dashboard reports available. On this particular report, we're looking at grades 4 through 8. So here's what we see on this report. So we really have 3 different measures. The value here, it says 2112. This is dummy data set for the year 2112. You wouldn't see that. You'd see your most recent year. So this would be last year's data. It would be the same data that you would see on the gain model report. It's also available in the predictive model and so forth. But all you're seeing on this report is the color coding that goes with that. So we see light green, so we see moderate evidence of growth. Right next to that is the multi-year value added. Again, we're not seeing the numbers that go with this. If we want to see that, we would go to the diagnostic report. We're really just seeing the outcome of these values. What in many cases might be all that you really want to know. You aren't going to know how much growth these students had. You're just going to see that they had significant evidence. With the diagnostic report, we might see a little bit more detail as the numbers that make up these color coding. But anyways, we're looking at the multi-year value added, and then down below it is what we have seen in the diagnostic report, where we had 5 performance levels. And then how did that group do? And we'll take a look at this one in a little bit to see this in more detail. But this is performance group 1, which would be the 1 to the 20th percentile group of students. Group number 2 would be the 21 through 39, 40 group, and so forth on up to, and you can see that this particular report only has a group 1, 2, 3, and 4. There is no group 5. And groups 3 and 4, there aren't enough students in there to be calculated, although there were some students in those groups. So this gives me a visual that I see that the majority of my students in this group of 4th grade are low achieving students, but they did very well because they're color coded dark green. So they show significant evidence of growth. This is a 1-year calculation. The next group of students, that low middle group, they maintain their relative position. We don't have a measure for the groups 3, 4, and we don't even have students in group 5 in this class. So this group would be an overall low achieving group of students, but they performed fairly well. In fact, historically, the multi-year average shows that they have done just that, performed fairly well. So let's go across and take that same thought process across the board here. We can see in 5th grade, very nice looking data for last year with a trend that they've continued that growth. That's a multi-year average. They do a nice job with the low achieving in the middle group. They don't have enough students in the group 4 and don't have any in group 5. And group 2 maintain their position. So the 5th grade data here looks very strong. And again, this is mathematics, but that doesn't matter. The others would be the same. We start to see a different story when we get to 6th grade, where we can see that whole group showed significant evidence of no growth. Over a multi-year trend, they they do. So something changed in this group from the previous year. We see that the only two groups that had enough students to be calculated, they didn't meet growth. They had significant evidence they did not. And they're low achieving students only in this group. Groups 3, 4, and 5 is totally missing. With the 7th grade, a little bit different view here. They have moderate evidence. These are the light greens. They have been in the past and they still are showing moderate evidence of growth. The low middle group, group 2, showed a dark green, so they did very well. And the low group did performed at the yellow level, which would be maintaining their relative position. There are no students in groups 3, 4, and 5. There were no students, so those pieces of the pie are missing. Again, the advantage to this one is a quick view, is that as I look across these charts, I see in almost every case that this particular school is made up primarily of low achieving students. And those are calculated across the state. How do those students do across the state achievement-wise? Not just amongst the school, but across the state, so comparing all the schools together. So when we get to the 8th grade, we see that it's predominantly low achieving students. A few students in group 2, 4, and 5, no middle group, and not enough to be calculated. So the only group that had enough students would be group 1. So that's the beauty of this particular type of chart, is it allows me to kind of get a visual very quickly and see that trend and see what population is. I see the percentages in the diagnostic reports, but I don't see them in a pie chart, which for some people that would be an advantage. We'll take a look at that. So up here at the top, we're looking at, and this is the data that we just reviewed, we're looking at a diagnostic version of the data that's being shown below. So here we see last year's data, 2112 in this case, and that's pretty far away from us. We see that this group of students, this is an advantage to this particular report. It allows me to see the actual color coding that should be in there. This one is that's 1 standard error, and here's my 2 standard error. Since both of these lines down here are not above the growth standard, this would be light green. So while it's hard to tell, but that group should be light green. While looking at this chart up above, what we're talking about here with this particular slide, we can't tell how many students make up this group. All we can tell is that they showed growth, and we can measure how much, but we don't know how many. Now, the actual report, the diagnostic, has a table below that would tell you the number of students and a percent of the students and so forth. The decision dashboard simply puts that in a visual way. So next to that is the previous year, and that's totally missing from down below. We don't see the previous year calculation at all in our report. It's not there. When we look at group 2, we see that that growth is between 1 standard error above and below the growth standard. That's the yellow line in our calculation, and that's group 2 right here. Notice that group 3 is missing. There may be a few students in it, but there's not enough for the calculation to be made. So group 3 on the pie chart is blank. It's telling me the same thing as the diagnostic report up above. Previous years, that group has not done well. I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly. In previous years, that group has maintained. That would be yellow, coded yellow. Even though that bar graph is below, this is an important point, even though this bar shows below the growth standard of 0, it is still within 1 standard error above and below. So that is yellow. So you're tempted to look at this and say, well, they did not have as much growth, but they did. Because remember, value added uses statistics to back up the growth. And that statistics is the standard error, and it's looking at the growth above and below of 1 standard error. As long as that falls inside this range, we have color-coded if yellow. We met or maintained our growth. There aren't enough students in group 4 or 5. There aren't any in group 5. That's why there was no pie piece down here below. So we're comparing the two. We're not seeing the previous year's of data like we do the current year. It does get a little tricky on seeing the colors because without this chart, I had this calculated as being a light yellow, or dark yellow, when it really is a light yellow. So there are some advantages to seeing the actual numbers, just depending on the way computers happen to present those colors to you. So there's your main difference between a diagnostic report and a decision dashboard report. Similar data, one's a little more visually oriented. So overall, when we open up the report in EVOS and look at an entire building, this is a middle school that has grades 4 through 8 in it. We see, and I had used this middle section of this for our data on the previous slides. But very quickly, you could get a visual that science down here also serving the same populations of low achieving students, but they repeatedly do not meet growth. They're red the only 2 times that they're tested. They have a little bit better trend in multi-year, but even that orange color, remember, is moderate evidence that growth was not met. So just looking at this, I see a little more success in the middle grades for English language arts, but what stands out with me is that in 7th grade, for example, historically, they've had better growth. They met their expectations, so that's still good. But we see a real problem in 8th grade, 8th grade, 8th grade. Low achieving students, this is an example of students that are low achieving and then they're not making gains either. So they're behind and they're falling further behind. At least with grades 6 and 7 in language arts, actually, and 5th also, we see that those students are at least maintaining their relative position. It doesn't mean that they passed the state test. It means that they maintain their relative position. That's why they're color-coded yellow. So to wrap this up, I put down 3 pros. We see the value-added data for the building and the district. We're seeing that value-added data, and we get this visual. The second pro I had is that we see the percent of students in each achievement group. You can see that in the diagnostic report, but you have to look at the data table to calculate that out. With the color coding, we can quickly get a visual of the entire building. We really have a dashboard of that building's performance. Some of the cons that we ran into actually when we were just going over that, we don't really see the degree of the growth by standard error like we do with a diagnostic report. And for the multi-year, we really only see the overall. Okay, and that concludes my video on the decision dashboard with value added.